Monday School is what Wally learned at church in 3 minutes or less. Think of it as like the Twitter version of church.
So we talked about the importance and blessing of sharing Christ with others, and it can be intimidating, but you have to remember that you're actually doing something good for someone. Because sometimes I don't want to be pushy and or off-putting, but then if you care enough about them to share the gospel with them, and you do it from the right perspective, like that, like I care about you, then it usually goes better for you. And when we share our faith, there's two sides to the story. The first side of the story is God's story, what he did for us, and the fact that he is the only one who loves us unconditionally. Because we have a lot of examples in our lives of people who do not love us unconditionally. We have a lot of examples of bad fathers, and he's a perfect heavenly father. So there's things you can draw on, thematically to share your faith, but you're telling his story, and we've been trusted by God to share his story. But the second story is your story. And that's the one that no one can really argue with. You can debate theology and stuff like that, but you sharing your story is your experience, and you know it better than anybody else. And so I think that's a way that you can have an impact on people, because you're uniquely qualified to share your story, because no one has your story, and you might be surprised too how it lands, because you think of all these other people that have these giant jailhouse conversions or these big stories. I was a drug addict, and I came to know Christ, and he turned my life around. Like, now that's a story. Mine is I grew up in a Christian home, and I really didn't have any problems.
Yeah. But I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not important.
Exactly, because the amount of people that had massive drug problems is probably a lot lower than the people that had a normal, just whatever life, and so you can connect with people on that level. And so basically, if you've been wanting to share your story, but you've been nervous about it, here's a good way to remind it, or a good way to help you go through it, is share your life before Christ. Here's where I was. Here's what was happening in my life. This is where I was at. Then how you personally met Christ. Like, what was it that led to that moment in your life? Was it somebody else sharing with you? And then finally, your life now. Like, the difference that Jesus has made. And hopefully there's a difference. There should be.
I hope so.
In that personal relationship and what that brings you. Things like joy and peace and contentment. Because that's the stuff people are looking for. That's the stuff that they try to desperately find other places.
And also keep in mind that people are always watching. So your, how you react to difficult situations, if you're showing peace and contentment through the whole thing, that speaks volumes.
And if you think about it, the Bible is a book filled with stories of people's lives. I mean, that's what it is. And so, and it's the difference that Christ made when they encountered him. And so that's what your life is today. We have the same ability, because there's power in the gospel that will transcend our verbal abilities for sure. And if we're bold enough and care enough to share Christ with those around us, it can make a huge difference for them, and it's a blessing for you at the same time. So there you go. That's your Monday School today.